Hello and welcome. Moving straight on with some of the comments and questions, which will hopefully lead us toward some discussion on Dharma. Saying that, but anyway, help the poor cat get rid of the fleas, bro. I don't think the cat, maybe she has some fleas, I'm not sure. If the cat has fleas, so do I, because we are in such close proximity a lot of the time. Poor cat, well, she has a choice of many other household environments to live with, families and children who also love her dearly and look after her when I'm not. So she's very happy to come and go as she pleases. So I wouldn't describe her as a poor cat suffering unduly. I think a lot of the scratching you see, when you see her going crazy with scratching, is like they used to say in the 90s, all that scratching is making me itch. Because she has the same problem with mosquitoes as I do. But I've learned through the Dharma that yes, all that scratching does make you itch. It is best left alone, undisturbed, and the itch will go of its own accord. This is the Dharma. Impermanence, suffering, not self. So we adapt everything we come across in our lives as monastics to exactly that understanding. But unfortunately for the animal realm, for a cat or a dog or a flea even, it doesn't have the opportunity to listen, to understand the Dharma. But I certainly think there is something to be said for animals that live around the Dharma. In my experience, the animals living in monastic environments, in monasteries, where you've seen on these videos, where I've had temporary relationships, again impermanent, with many dogs, cats, and much more exotic creatures of a reptilian nature, snakes and even spiders. Over these few years I've been living in such environments. Few years, getting on 10 years now, in fact. But these are impermanent relationships, but I have certainly found when you have adopted a practice of maintaining sila in its ultimate sense of doing no harm, either to yourselves or others, that all beings pick up on that, detect that. And certainly when I'm talking here, or when she's alone, I've noticed the cat. I observe these things. She does scratch a lot, whereas if she comes and sits on my lap during my meditation or near me, she doesn't do this. It is because she's feeling comfort from something other than scratching that itch, of just being in the presence of someone else who perhaps she feels isn't going to harm her and she is safe to be around. So she's okay. If she's got fleas, I mean, I don't interfere with nature, and in that way hope it won't interfere too much with me. But I would certainly have the fleas also, and I wouldn't scratch that itch. Neither do I, with my, as I've learned now, scratch those mosquito bites. In fact, I allow the mosquito to take its fill and fly on its merry way, having had its breakfast, its lunch, or its dinner of blood. And it then takes with it usually the scratchy, itchy irritant that it injects, just to actually decoagulate, anticoagulant. It injects to suck the blood up more easily without it clotting in its proboscis. That it takes with it if you let it have its final sip. There's a little tip there, how not to have a mosquito itchy bite. Let it finish its meal. Don't disturb it. Let it then go on its way, and it won't scratch. There we go, the Dharma from a flea question. Some people say that Buddhism is an atheist religion. What do you think about this? So I don't think much about that. I try not to overthink much about anything other than what is happening in the present moment, here and now. That is in my practice. But with regards to what people say, then if they're saying it is an atheist religion, it's not quite correct. Atheist means non-theistic. There is no gods, never has been, no such thing as a god or gods. Whereas a theistic religion implies a god, a singular god, a creator god, such as Christianity, Islamic faith, Judaic faiths, etc. In Buddhism, in fact, in Buddhist cosmology, mythology, and in the scriptures, and even in the words of the Buddha in some of the suttas, there are heavenly realms, hell realms, and many Brahmic realms where there are gods, and even leaders and head gods, and most senior gods, and most powerful. And the equivalent thereof also of devils, such like you've heard of Mara. So there are many gods in that sense. So one cannot say it's totally atheistic. However, whether or not you believe there is a god, many gods, or no gods at all, is to some extent irrelevant from the practice, because likewise, as all conditioned things in this realm are impermanent, even the heavens and hell realms, and those who live in those heavenly realms and hell realms, or those states, because they're not geographical locations, those states, those individuals, those beings that may abide in those realms are not there permanently. It may be for incalculable lengths of time in our perception of time, but it isn't, again, a permanent place of abode. However, one could draw the conclusion, and this is why perhaps people say it, that because we don't believe in one single creator God, whom has the power of creation and also the power to determine your future as to whether you go to heaven or hell, then there is no such thing in Buddhism. But that doesn't mean that the word atheist is correct, because atheist means strictly disagreeing that there is any such thing as God. A prefix means not, theistic means God, something like that. So that is not the case. And even Buddhists whom aren't so much into mythology, cosmology, and the other 32, I think, rounds of existence, because they haven't come to see and or recall or be able to experience for themselves knowledge of those, so they put it aside. They in most cases wouldn't deny their existence outright, because as much as we cannot prove something, we cannot disprove it either. So that would be unwise. Okay, who decides if the adverts for you are appropriate? There are very clever, intelligent, experienced and wiser ones in advertising than you and I. So how can, I think this is supposed to say you, it doesn't, but how can you discount that they are sending you inappropriate advertising? If you are beyond the world, you may learn something from the advertising. Apologies there, but it's a bit of a typing or translation error. So I suppose this is in relation to me saying that I don't have advertising because it might be inappropriate, and who decides what's appropriate and what's not. In my case, for me as a monk, we as monks are leading a life of renunciation. And a monk, in that renunciation, so renouncing our worldly goods, really our identities, our careers, money, families, friends, and coming down to the bare necessities of life, living where we're sent to live, and just living with simple one set of robes, one meal a day, and basic medicines and basic shelter. Also renounce that idea of choice. Along with the renunciation of the use of money, we can't go and buy things. So the reason I, as in you refer to me, you, can say that advertising is inappropriate for me, I wouldn't say is inappropriate in the sense that it's offensive, because I can choose not to observe, not to watch, not to listen, and certainly cannot buy. But I have relinquished that choice. As a monk, I have little in the way of choice. Now, what food is offered to me in the morning and is in my bowl, I can choose to leave some or share it with others and just eat what remains. But I can't go from one household to another saying, yeah, I'll have a bit of that, but I don't want that today. No, tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, but the next house I'll have some of that. As much as actually the kind people offering would like me to do that, it's kind of prohibited within our rules because it is part of the training. So I'm going to tell a story I didn't tell yesterday or in the last talk because it was running on a bit. And it's just a story, so it's not the truth necessarily, but it's a useful analogy, put it that way, of a farmer who employed this chap on the farm. Wasn't sure what he was going to do with him, but he was looking for work, so he gave him some fencing, some wood to chop, some wood, put it that way. Gave him some trees and an axe and a chopping block and said, chop this wood up and makes a pile of logs. And towards the end of the day, the man had completely finished his work, more than the employer had expected his new employee to have possibly have coped with him one day, and completed the daily tasks admirably, done such a wonderful job. And he thought, well, that's very good, but I'll have to think of something to give him to do tomorrow, because he's finished the work I'd really set by for him for the whole week. And this isn't a joke, so don't expect a punchline. I don't tell jokes. He asked the man, he said, well, please, yes, come back tomorrow and we'll find something else for you to do. So he came back the next day, and the man was very pleased to see him return. And he thought, well, okay, what can I do? So he asked the man, you can go over there and just simply dig some holes like this, boom, 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 in a line, and then someone will come along and put the posts in, and this will be the start of making a fence. And the man went along throughout the day, and he dug his holes all the way around the perimeter, completely finishing the job once again. Piece of work that the farmer had expected this man to make last for a week or so. And the farmer was delighted and said, well, come back tomorrow, I'll find something for you to do. And being so impressed with this individual that he'd taken on, really out of pity just to give him some work, but found him so diligent in his work, so conscientious and getting so much done in one day. He said, well, today, he said, I've got something wonderful for you to do. You come inside. The weather's a little inclement on this day, but you can come inside, and you see here we have all of the potatoes we've grown this year. He says, you've got some big ones, small ones, you've got some not so good ones. He said, I'd like you to sort them. So you just take the potato, and if it's a good potato, put it in this basket. If it's one that maybe isn't not such good quality, put it in that one. Too small, that one. Too big, that one. Anyway, he thought this would be great. This will keep this new employee very happy for the day. And it got to the end of the day, and the man came out of the barn. And the farmer was there, and the farmer says, well, how did you get on? He says, oh, not very well, he said. He said, in fact, I'm leaving. And the farmer said, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. Why are you leaving? He said, well, it's just crazy, he said. I pick up one potato, and I have to make a decision. And then no sooner as I've put that potato in its relevant basket, another one comes along, and yet another decision, another potato, another decision, another potato. It's decision after decision after decision. I quit, I'm leaving. And that was that. You see, as soon as you have choice, there is suffering. And this is the training of renunciation. We take away a lot of that choice. So yes, people whom are with a budget and looking to spend, those clever, I don't so much think it's the experts in advertising, but the algorithms these days, they are pushing advertising towards people, say watching YouTube before and after videos. And those adverts are cleverly worked out as not necessarily something you'd be interested in or have searched for before, but what you generally have as habits, your habitual behavior that something like Google has determined, leads them to believe you might be interested in. So don't blame me for the adverts, blame yourself. It's the algorithms picked up your interests and it pushes those adverts your way. So the reason I'm lucky I have YouTube Premium that has no adverts is because I like to be able to use this facility to talk to you. And not that that's necessary for that, but I also like to listen to Dharma talks as you do on this platform. It's the only platform I use to listen to Dharma talks. In fact, it's the only thing I use the internet for, really, if you can call it the internet, is this YouTube, to listen to Dharma talks, and that's about it. I can deal with the comments within this platform and the emails which come separately relatively easily, just checking my messages once a day. And then it takes no time. But if I'm bombarded every time I open YouTube to listen to a Dharma talk with advertising, the reason I say it's inappropriate is because I can't buy anything anyway. And I'm not usually going to even understand these days what it is that I'm being, that's being suggested or offered. So that's what I was referring to there. I don't think I'm missing out on what I would learn from the adverts, if that's what you were suggesting. Sexual misconduct means ? In other words, live a brahmacharya lifestyle. In other words, live a brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means celibate lifestyle. No, sexual misconduct doesn't mean a celibate lifestyle as in the 5 precepts. It converts to celibacy once you move to 8 precepts. But for ordinary lay life, for laymen, laywomen living on the 5 precepts, sexual misconduct simply means not specifically determining any form of sexual activity, but with whomever, and not really making reference to either monogamy or whatever the opposite of that is, polygamy. I don't know, is that the right or is that an animal? I'm not sure. It is not it's not relating to sexual orientation, because of course these things in different cultures are all considered in different ways anyway. What sexual misconduct means, which is your question, is sexual activity with another that is mutually beneficial and mutually consented to, and I would say mutually desired. Yes, so it's of an equal basis. Anything outside of that, so a boss to an employee, or an employer to an employee, or a teacher to a student, or a senior relation to a junior relation, anything like this is considered very much sexual misconduct. It is also applied in, what's that word, monogamous, is that for a single couple relationship, it applies to faithfulness in a relationship. But I mean, that is also covered by the 4th precept of lying, because in order to have an unfaithful relationship that isn't agreed to by each and every party involved, then you'd have to lie. So it's covered more in the lying precept of 4. But strictly speaking, sexual misconduct means mutual consent and benefit and desire. Why did you choose the Theravada tradition as opposed to Tibetan / Zen? Do you have any thoughts on the other traditions? So I just researched the main schools of Buddhism when I first looked at Buddhism, and found that the Theravada school of Buddhism is more in line with the original teachings of the Buddha, as in the Pali Canon, the Buddhist scriptures, and it's why it's called Theravada, way of the elders. And really it is in fact the case that that's how it started. I don't tend to say I'm a Theravada Buddhist, I'm not a Zen Buddhist. If you looked at my practice, it's more in line with modern day Zen Buddhism than what you would describe as modern day Theravada Buddhism. You won't see me sitting in a temple chanting the Pali Canon for hours on end, and in big thrones with many thousands of visitors and monks and palatial goings on. That's really what you'll see in the Theravada world. I mean, I'm just sitting in a concrete room staring into space, or with my eyes closed in samadhi. This is much more what you call Zen. So I tend to just drop all these labels, forget about them, they're not important. I'm not anything. I'm just a simple Buddhist monk. I'm an English monk, a renunciant, a mendicant, call me what you like. But I practice what the Buddha taught us, the Noble Eightfold Path, coming from the Four Noble Truths: suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering. That Noble Eightfold Path: sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, and the development of wisdom. Wholesome mind states, the eradication of unwholesome mind states. My work is to eradicate greed, hatred, and delusion, the kilesas, these defilements. What you want to call that, it's irrelevant. So I chose a monastery that had good teachers coming from good teaching. So they were coming directly from, it was a Theravada monastery. This is the monastery I chose to ordain in. Well, it chose me also. You can't just pick. They have to accept you. You have to live there for a while before they'll accept you. But I built up a relationship with that monastery whilst living in another monastery in another country. And then it came to be that I happened to be have the opportunity to ordain in this monastery in India, where I did, where I also had a good relationship with the monks, who spoke very good English, taught a very good cross-section of Dharma from the Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutta Pitaka, and the Abhidharma. So I had a very good exposure to the entire Pali Canon from those very renowned in India and very established teachers, my teachers in this tradition. So that's why I chose it indirectly, how it came about. And I couldn't have asked for a better way of learning the theoretical side of Dharma. My practice side of Dharma comes back more from my Thai forest tradition teachers and my background and experience living in Thai forest monasteries, both in my own country in England and in Thailand, where it is very much more austere environments, living in forests and eating strictly one meal a day, and quite adapting some of the allowable ascetic practices. You see, this is the middle path. Not an ascetic path, not a life of luxury that the Buddha taught. And at first it was with some apprehension that his first students, who were his original companions in the ascetic practices, reluctantly heard, because they thought, well, he had renounced his ascetic practices to return to his life of luxury. But then when he said the life of luxury was not for anyone, and it was only unsatisfactory, producing more and more desire, it was scratching that itch, making it more scratchy, more itchy. He said, but neither is that the way to enlightenment, neither is this totally ascetic practice of really emaciating the body and torturing yourself by way of trying to burn away these kilesas of greed, hatred and delusion. This tapas practice, this burning away of defilements, is sort of self-torture asceticism to get rid of greed, hatred and delusion that comes long before Buddhism in other Indian religions and philosophies, practices of thousands of years prior to even when the Buddha came along. What he discovered was this middle path, somewhere in between, not too luxurious, not too ascetic. But to this modern day world, the life of a monk may seem to you a little ascetic, but it's really not when you get used to it, when you've lived like I have like this for some length of time. And he did allow 13 Dhutanga practices, they're called, which are the more ascetic practices, one of which is just eating one meal a day, as opposed to eating all morning, which you could do, or you could have breakfast, you could have elevenses, you could have lunch, as long as you finish by midday, noon. All Buddhist monks cannot eat solid food in the afternoon, but many of them will have 2 meals in the morning, a big, some breakfast and then some lunch. But many of us also in the forest tradition choose not to do that and just to have the one meal. I do so for practical reasons. Also for practical reasons and also discipline, I just have this one set of robes. So this one set of robes, which is sort of, I've had for a few years now, will be replaced at the end of this Vassa, but it won't be in addition. These will be used as curtains or shower curtains I use old robes for, or floor cloths or bandages. And if they're not in too bad a condition, or then they're not doing so well after 2 years, I might even, I don't know, I'll find some purpose for them, whatever. Maybe you can make bags out of them, something like that. Sew up a carrying bag or something like that. But nevertheless, if you were to wear just one shirt and one pair of trousers with no underwear for 2 years, or a few ladies, you were wearing one skirt and one blouse, maybe that's the wrong thing to say these days, whatever your items of clothes. So let me suggest to you, if you for 2 years just have one pair of trousers and one blouse. Let's say 2 pairs of trousers or 2 skirts, because as you see hanging out there, I have 2 of these underskirts because I change that. We get very sweaty here. So I do alternate that. So that's an additional cloth, which we are allowed. It's called a bathing cloth, because if we have to go bathing in public, we need to be still covered up. And we want something else to put on afterwards. But if you imagine you had just this very limited amount of clothing, like I do, this one robe, this lower robe, and no towels or anything like that. I mean, when I have showered, I just put these robes on and they naturally dry me for 2 years. Now, what kind of condition would those items of clothing of yours be in now, 2 years later? Now, you imagine that if you can. This is what we do as monks, and this is having little choice. I don't have to think of what to wear in the morning. I pick up what I've slept in, wrapped around me, what I use to dry me after a shower, what I use to go out in the wind and the rain and in the sun and the heat, in the dust and the grime of the town, traveling. Whatever happens, I only ever have this one robe, and I have done for more than 2 years. So it's done very well, but that's because I have to be very disciplined about how I look after it. We have rules. If a little hole is made in it, if it catches on a thorn, something like that, and there's a hole any more the diameter than a matchstick, then it has to be sewn before dawn the next day. So you need to catch it whilst it's still daylight. Otherwise, if you've got old-fashioned, old eyes like mine, you might not be able to see so well to sew, and repair that hole quickly. The principle of a stitch in time saves 9. Sew it up quickly rather than letting it turn. We have to take very good care of everything that is offered to us. Like these robes were offered to me. The same people in Thailand have offered me my next set of robes, which I will determine as my new robes come the end of this Vassa. But that is really why I chose this tradition, because it has all of those original ideas the Buddha taught by way of the Vinaya, his rules, and in the suttas. And on his deathbed, on his parinibbana, his legacy, he said, was not someone to inherit his position, to become the leader. His legacy was the Vinaya, the rules of Buddhist monks and nuns. That is his legacy to all of humanity, not just the monks and nuns, but to the lay people also. Because by way of the example we set, by living this way, you can see that when you don't have that extra designer blouse or designer shirt or pair of trousers or skirt in your wardrobe that you might like to have because you're bored of the other 15, you might reflect, well, you know, that monk who comes on YouTube 3 or 4 times a week or every day in the live chanting in the morning, he seems to manage to do that with just his one bit of dirty old cloth that he sleeps in. So if he can do that, why do I need another designer blouse? You know, some modern day captains of industry adopted this also. I think Steve Jobs was one, Barack Obama. Now, they may have had many of the same outfit, but essentially they only had the same outfit, the same coloured suit and coloured shirt that they always wore. This got rid of that idea of choice. And as well as its practical advantages, it also directs in the case of someone like Steve Jobs, their colleagues and their customers' attention. And in the case of someone like a politician or president like Barack Obama, it directs their audience's attention to the individual's input, or what they have to say, or what they're doing, as opposed to, oh, look at what he's wearing today. That would never be a question that comes into the mind of someone watching Steve Jobs, for instance. Oh, what's he wearing today? You know, you knew he'd be wearing that same polo neck top and black trousers or whatever. He would generally look the same, as did the other chap. So I think I've digressed there, and I've completely lost track of the time. Why I don't look at the time when I begin. You see, that's a lack of mindfulness, really. Getting excited about talking to you and not paying attention to the time. Okay, this is a number of questions which I think I've answered in my videos with regards to addiction in some detail, but I'm going to answer them in a kind of not a long-winded way, a short way if I can. Do you have any past experience with getting clean and sober off a substance, particularly quitting marijuana? If so, what helped you do that? So in order to become Buddhist monks or nuns, to become ordained, you're taking on the 5 precepts as lay Buddhists, and the 5th precept requires you to have no intoxicants. And I started with meditation, then that led me to Buddhism. But even before actually I embarked on Buddhism and knew about these 5 precepts, I decided then that drinking alcohol, smoking, say, marijuana, that intoxicants were not beneficial to my life as it was. I enjoyed that life and everything that went with it for many years, but it soon became apparent that that was not conducive to my happiness, ultimately, my long-term goal of contentment. I thought that could be achieved through these things in a materialistic way. But having looked towards renunciation, and then that being confirmed by coming to understand these 5 precepts and the results of vastly improved meditation, I just naturally, well, not naturally, I was very disciplined. I stopped drinking alcohol first, and more or less at the same time thought, well, you just mustn't have any intoxicants then, so marijuana. And then a little bit later, I stopped even smoking cigarettes, because I used to smoke tobacco on its own. And the way I did that, I've talked about many times before. It's just don't do it. It's not a case of doing something, it's a case of not doing anything. So that's how I did it. Do you have advice for me or anyone else in this position who is newly sober but one day really wants to embrace the Dharma monastically? Yeah, I'd suggest you need to be sober. I mean, different monasteries have different rules. I don't think they have specific rules on this subject. I mean, there's a monastery, and I don't know the name of it, in Thailand, which just deals with drug or people with addictions, drugs and alcohol, and it takes people in and gives them programs to help them recover. But that's one monastery out of many around the world, so it's quite unique. So I wouldn't suggest that's also, I would imagine it's quite a popular thing and quite hard to get into. But no, I mean, if you want to embrace monastic life, I would suggest you need to be free from intoxicants, or clean as they would say, for a good few years before you even contemplate it. Because when you go into monastic life, you've got to give up so much. If you're trying to give up what is one of the harder things, physical addiction as well, it could be problematical. Because often when you give up a physical addiction, such as alcohol, or I think that is a physical addiction. I don't know much about other physical addictions, and possibly marijuana is psychologically, although I don't think you have physical withdrawals necessarily from that. But if you were giving up those kind of things, often you might need something other than Dharma, like watching TV or movies, or drinking copious amounts of cup of tea whenever you want it with lots of sugar, might help you get over the physical sides. So I would take professional advice in the arena of the addiction support that's available in worldly life, and work on that very hard for a few years before you contemplate going into a monastery. I didn't even visit a monastery for the first time until I'd been clean for 3 years. The thought, in fact, never even occurred to me. But I was practicing meditation intensively, but my own form of practice. And that did encompass the precepts, the 5 precepts, that is. So that's all I can say. Do you know of any Buddhist teachings, practices that could help me? Yes. So help me stay sober and rediscover more mental and emotional balance. More mental and emotional balance. Yes. The Paticca Samuppada, the 12 links of dependent origination. Paticca Samuppada. Just Google 12 links of dependent, I said separation, did I? 12 links of dependent origination. That's an entirely different subject, the 6 degrees of separation, isn't it? But no, the 12 links of dependent origination, yeah? Sutta. It's in the chanting book also, Paticca Samuppada Sutta. But this is how birth leads to seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, to feelings about that, liking it, disliking it, wanting more of it, trying to satiate, craving, tanha, thirst, addiction and rebirth. It describes the cycle of addiction beautifully. I mean, that's the directed sutta for all addicts. It's hard to understand. It's complicated, but it takes some time to get your mind around it, step by step, in 12 steps. Coincidentally, not the 12 steps of the other support groups there are, the AA or NA, 12 steps, it's the 12 links of dependent origination. Or have I confused myself, mixing things up there? I think it's equivalent. I think it's 12, yeah. So I don't know them off by heart, but I do talk about that. There's a video on here entitled that, I think. It might be entitled something to equate it with the 12-step program also. So just look for addiction somewhere. And that's the end of those questions there, and I think possibly enough for me today. That question is rather too long for a finishing up one. How should I practice as a lay follower, and how is it not pointless if I'm not a monastic? Okay, so just watch everything I've ever said. This is what I talk about every time. I never say that Buddhism is just for monks. It's more for lay people than for, as you call them, monastics, monks and nuns, because there are so many people in the world that are not monks and they're not nuns. And the Buddha had compassion for all beings. So if you're in the human realm, the Dharma is for you. There are specifically things for lay followers, the 5 precepts, as opposed to those who live in the monastery who have 8, 10, 227 or 311. So you have a whole discipline for yourself, just 5 precepts. But what's common for monks and nuns is the Noble Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. That is the practice, that's how you practice, and it is certainly not pointless. Try it for yourself and see. Experience how meditation can be so beautiful, enjoyable, if it's based on a firm foundation of keeping those precepts. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. That is the practice for both monks and nuns. So if there's something useful there, I hope you can use it. If not, just let it go. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.